Hello, Mind Mappers, and welcome to the video. Today we're going to be going over The Path of Least Resistance by Fritz, learning to become the creative force in your own life. This is a profoundly perspective-shifting book around purpose, around goals, around success, and what it takes to get there. I really recommend you watch the video all the way through. This is one of the most profound and one of the most impactful books that I've read on this channel. With that, let's get directly into the introduction, The Path of Least Resistance by Fritz. The greatest leaders and statesmen in history have not been problem solvers, they've been builders. They have been creators. And what this brings up for me is, are we problem solvers or are we creators? It might sound like a weird question. Problem solvers are generally admired in today's society, and it's something people even put on their resume. I'm a really good problem solver. Here's the difference between problem solvers and creators. We're not talking about the ability to solve problems here, right? It's really about the way that we approach life. Being able to solve problems is certainly a prerequisite, but it's not what we want to do with our lives, right? We don't want to be problem solvers because they kind of aimlessly walk down the road. They walk down that path of life until they hit an obstacle, something they can't overcome or feel like is keeping them from moving forward. They get around it, or they move over it, or they somehow get over top of it, which of course is great, but creators do something a little different. And again, this is just a perspective shift on how we view ourselves and how we view our purpose in life. Creators walk around purposely, and they walk down the path that leads towards what their desire is. They see ahead of them what might be in the way, and they prepare themselves to meet that challenge before it's actually necessary. In other words, they take an introspective look into themselves, and they say, what do I desire? And they move towards that. And kind of problem solvers, they walk around aimlessly, and problem solvers have a tendency to let other people put on them what they should be doing with their lives. They approach their life in a much more creative way rather than just work hard and sweat kind of way. And of course, we've all been taught that working hard and sweating and kind of rolling up our sleeves and getting things done is important, which I believe as well. But we have to pick and choose our situations. We have to know that we're working hard towards something that we desire rather than working hard towards something that someone told us we were supposed to want. With that, let's talk a little bit about mind mapping. You can get the most out of these mind maps by following along. You can find the process of how I mind map, plus all 50 plus of the mind map templates we've done on the channel, all at the link down below. And you can follow along because it's going to help you learn more. It's going to help you remember better, and it's going to help you apply these books to your life. And with that, let's get directly into the first big idea. I've kind of got a pastel color palette here for today's mind map. We're getting a little fun. We have structure as our first main idea. The next time you're in a building, notice how the structure of the building determines your path through it. Are you truly determining your own path? And this is what we talked a little bit about in the introduction. Problem solvers have a tendency to let other people determine their path for them, and creators go out and they forge their own way. Fritz shows us here that we're actually not forging our own paths when we're walking through that building, right? We're actually getting our behavior determined by the structure of the building, right? So the way that we walk through a building is determined by the structure of the building. The hallway gives you the path to walk. The stairwells are how you move up and in the building. And this is built by someone else. This, of course, is true in the building, but it's also true just in our everyday environment, in our environment of our lives. Have a bunch of candy in your pantry? Well, it's likely that you're going to eat it. Working in a place full of distraction? Well, good luck getting anything done. Is your house a mess? Good luck finding peace of mind. And also, I want to talk about just the structures that other people are putting on us, right? The job that you're supposed to get, the house that you're supposed to buy, the car that you're supposed to have. We need to be very mindful of this because if we're going to be a creator, we can't be having other people determine the path for us. So what about our mental realities? Humans construct mental structures. It's how we take our incredibly complex world and make it simple enough for us to live in. These structures might be something like, when I work hard, good things happen. That is something that I don't have control over. I can't do this because of that. Everyone has these structures. Most of them we picked up somewhere along the journey. It worked one time and they were helpful, but if we're not conscious of them, we tend to just use them in ways that end up holding us back because they worked that one time. And really what this book is all about is how to notice these structures, how to see these structures that we've made, how to see the structures that other people have given us, and kind of break the mold a little bit and become that creator in our own life. So a really interesting concept here. I think probably the most important point in the entire book right here is structure conflict. The structural conflict, most common in everyone's life, is formed by two competing tension resolution systems. This is a very, very good analogy. One is based on your desire, and the other is based on an incompatible dominant belief that you are not able to fulfill your desires. So we've kind of got this structural conflict, right? We've got this desire, this thing that we want, but we've also got this idea in our head that, again, we picked up along the way somewhere, whether it's from other people, from parents, from school, from friends, or just from ourselves, that we're not able to fulfill those desires. We're not able to accomplish what we want to be able to accomplish. So remember the structure that we talked about before? That's really what this is. It turns out that most people have what Fritz calls a structural conflict. Everyone has desires, something they want to create in their own life. But most of us have a belief that we can't achieve that thing. Again, sometimes it's picked up early in life as a defense mechanism, given to you by other people, and etc. There's a million different ways that it could pop up, but in Fritz's experience and in my own with my coaching clients, most people tend to have this. Imagine this, right? You're in the middle of a room. This is the analogy that he gives in the book. The wall in front of you is your desires. The wall behind you is your belief that you can't achieve those desires. Both walls have a rubber band anchored to them and tied around your waist. So you've got one on the wall in front of you, one on the wall behind you, both of them pulling you towards them. When you move towards your desires, the tension between them and you, your desire, actually decreases. While at the same time, the tension between you and your belief that you can't achieve them gets a little bit stronger. So, of course, we wonder what happens. We self-sabotage, we quit, or we find other reasons to stop pursuing the desires. Because the closer we get to them, the less compelling they are, and the more compelling our belief that we can't accomplish them is. And it's kind of this cycle, right? Continually, we go towards the wall with the things that we want, and we get slingshotted back towards the wall that says that we can't achieve those things. And it kind of goes back and forth, and this is most people's lives. I know this is certainly my life at different times. So what happens there? We self-sabotage, quit, find other reasons to do it. Of course, there's a million different reasons and a million different excuses, really, as why we can't accomplish this thing, all coming from our belief that we can't achieve the thing that we want. What happens then, right? The tension reverses. You get closer to this wall, and the cycle repeats. Your desires are more compelling than your belief that you can't achieve it, and you go back and do it again. As I said, that cycle starts to happen. Most people are just in a constant battle between these two forces in your life. Look back upon the last goals that you set, upon the thing that you're trying to accomplish right now. Are you feeling this tension cycle? Are you feeling this rubber band effect as you get closer and closer and closer to your goals? Right? This is the question that we need to ask. Are you feeling the tension at the very least? Are you feeling the repeating cycle? It's totally okay because now we have an awareness. And the rest of the book is all about what we can do about this. So now we talked about structure conflict, and now we're going to talk about structural tension, right? The discrepancy between what you want and what you currently have forms the most important structure in the creative process, that of structural tension. So, of course, we've got this concept of rubber bands that we're going to continue to use throughout the mind map. Let's talk about how we can use those elastic properties for our own benefits. First, we need a big anchor. We need something that we can tie our rubber band to, right? That desire rubber band. We need that to be something big. The bigger, the better, as Fritz tells us here, that the distance between us and our desires is the tension that we need in order to achieve them. So the further we move our big kind of grand purpose, the more elastic property that band between us and that purpose is, right? That desire that we have to move towards the thing that we want to achieve. So when we're creating what we want, we need to keep in mind that no tension is not a good place to be. even if we are 50-50 in between our desires and our abilities to accomplish them, or our belief that we can accomplish them, that is not a good place to be. Even though it's the place of the least amount of tension, we want to be in the place of the maximum amount of tension, but only the one that's pointing us in the right direction. So instead, we want to be able to feel the distance between us and our goals, because the closer we get, the less compelling the goals become. So reading between the lines here, this is a pretty small quote, but reading between the lines here, what we're looking into is, I don't believe we need to make ourselves feel like lacking, guilty, or ashamed of where we currently are to get that tension. And I think that's a lot of what we try and do, right? So when we're setting a goal or we're trying to achieve something, quite often we kind of fight the bad of the I don't believe I can do this with the, in my opinion, even worse of like feeling guilty that we're not achieving that thing. So we have to be very careful with those two different rubber bands. It's almost like a third rubber band pulling us sideways and just wrecking the whole entire analogy. So we don't want to be doing that. Instead, I think we should focus on making our connection to our desires more concrete, deeper, and more vivid in our minds. Don't worry about where you are right now. Worry about where the elastic band is tied to, and know that the power of structural tension will eventually help you get there. So instead of making yourself feel guilty, ashamed, focus on the things that you need to do in order to get there. Focus on what it's going to be like when you get there. Focus on performing at a very high level in whatever endeavor you're looking to accomplish. So that was structural tension. Now we're kind of over the structure part of the mind map, and we're moving into creative force. We're moving into this idea of creating the lives that we want. Without making the fundamental choice to be the predominant creative force in your life, no matter what you do, to attempt to benefit yourself or enhance your life, you will merely be finding more sophisticated ways of responding to your circumstances. So remember that rubber band holding you back? We talked a lot about structural tension. We talked about how we want to make our goals and our purpose in life vivid as possible so that we feel the tension pulling us towards the accomplishment of that goal. Now we're going to talk about getting rid of, or at least loosening the tension as much as we possibly can on that rubber band behind us. And that's through adopting this creative force idea. The one thing that says things like, right? So there is no way you can do this, because people like you from where you're from with your level of intelligence can't do it. So sorry, this is the rubber band that we're talking about right here. I got a little off track, but essentially we're talking about, remember the rubber band that's holding you back. The rubber band says things like this: there's no way you can do this because people like you from where you're from with your level of intelligence can't accomplish that thing. The system just isn't set up in a way for you to do what you want to do, right? And a million different other variations of these too. Well, we can make our desires as clear, vivid, and compelling as ever, but we're still not going to be able to escape this elastic band, even if we put a ton of tension into that structure that we talked about before. Remember, the closer that we get to our desires, the weaker their pull is, and the stronger the pull of the inner saboteur. Instead of focusing all our mind on the desires, let's take a minute and look at the other band. What can we do to make it way more stretched out? What can we do to ideally take that rubber band off of our waist? Fritz tells us here that we can make a choice, and we can release that rubber band that is going to be pulling us back. This one fundamental choice, to be the predominant creative force in your life, is a foundation for the entire orientation of creative. From this choice, the meaning of the word desire changes from the idle wishes and hopes, to the true vision of which is the highest in human aspiration and vision. So that's it. We need to shift from being the victim of our circumstances up here and shift into being the creator of our lives. Desires then become a true vision for our highest aspiration versus just the hopes and dreams. We need to see ourselves as fully able to actually accomplish the things that we're setting out. We need to see ourselves as being the creator in our life, because that's going to help us get that elastic band off our waist. Here we go. Choices. Another amazing point. Such a great analogy. A primary choice is about some result that you want in itself and for itself. So this is what we would maybe be talking about inside of structural tension. This is the purpose that you're trying to fulfill, something that you're trying to accomplish in your life. It functions as the ultimate goal, the one that we were talking about before. A choice that helps you take a step towards your primary result is called a secondary choice. Athletes and musicians may not enjoy practicing for long hours, but they do so just the same. Not out of duty, obligation, or any other form of self-manipulation, but because they are making secondary choices consistent with their primary choice to be able to perform music or excel at sports. So this point right here is really talking all about what I said before, that third elastic band, that one that's pulling you off course by making you feel ashamed and guilty and etc. Right? You've got this primary choice, and then quite often you feel like you have to make yourself feel guilty, ashamed, and etc. to do the things that you need to do, make these secondary choices in order to get there. But really, if we're in congruence with this primary choice and secondary choice, you don't need to feel those guilty feelings. You don't need to make yourself feel bad for not doing these things. You just know that these are the choices that you need to make. And that's what we're talking about right now. What choices are we making? So far, we've talked a lot about tension, conflict, and how that affects what we believe we can do. Those are all very important because they allow us to choose a true and meaningful to us primary choice. This is the big goal that you want to have at any given time, whether it's 5 years, 2 years, or a lifetime. Some result that you want in and of itself and for itself. But what about the things that you need to do to get to that goal? It's not good enough just to have the big goal, right? Gabrielle Oettingen tells us in Rethinking Positive Thinking, those of us that focus just on the outcome, on the thing that we want to achieve, are way less likely to actually achieve them. So what about the things that we need to do? Perhaps we'll have to work long hours. We'll have to learn a new skill that's tedious at the beginning. Go against our natural tendencies. These are what Fritz calls secondary choices, and ones that we have to make much more often. Most of them we have to make on a daily basis. Actually, you could think of a primary choice as just a commitment to make many more secondary choices. Secondary choices are what truly leads us towards our goals, and primary choices are simply the things that we commit to make secondary choices on. Even when they are difficult, even when it's difficult to make the secondary choice, the primary choice tells us that we must make them. So think of it this way. First, what's your primary choice? Write that down in as vivid detail as you possibly can. Second, are your secondary choices leading you towards that primary choice? Are you making the choices that you need to make in order to accomplish that primary goal? And if you're not, why aren't you? Are we looking at not being the creative force in our life? Is the structural tension not hard enough? Or are you simply not really even in touch with what your true choice is, your true primary choice, because of the structure that's in the way? You can see that these things are starting to sort of all weave together into a simple practice that you can use, some mind maps or some mental models that you can use when setting goals, or if you bump up against obstacles in your life, or you're feeling kind of that structural tension or that structural conflict cycle. Our next point is about want. The vital question of the creative process. What do I want to create? Whenever you are confused, you can become clear by asking and answering this question. Confusion usually comes from focusing on process or solution and not being able to see where you are going. When you're considering what you want, your ability to focus your attention towards desire eliminates this confusion, right? Your ability to focus your attention towards the desired result that you have, right? That idea that you want, that one main thing, that primary choice that you want eliminates the confusion. When you're confused, it is usually not about where you want to go, but how to get there. If you try to find a way to get you there before you know where you want to go, naturally you can expect confusion to accompany your quest. So if you're feeling lost and you're unsure of what to do next, you might want to look at which part of the process am I looking at, right? That confusion usually comes by being focused too much externally. Instead of asking yourself, what do I want? You're likely asking yourself, what can I get? Or how can I get there? Both of these are not bad questions, but if you ask them before you ask yourself what you truly want, of course it's going to get confusing. It's like asking the GPS to take you there, and you haven't said where there is. Of course, the GPS would bug out and be confused. Remember the elastic bands and the structural tension that we talked about before. We're continually coming back and weaving these together. In order to conceive of what you truly want to create, you must separate what you want from what you think is possible. Listening to yourself is a practice of quieting the mind, overcoming your tension and beliefs so that you can truly hear what you want. And when was the last time? That's a good question to ask yourself, everyone. When was the last time that I truly listened to myself? This might seem like a silly question, but by now you've seen just how our minds trick us into not believing in ourselves. Given that, most of us don't ask, what do I want? But we ask, what can I get? And we'll see what's coming up next, but that question is going to leave us pretty unmotivated. And the next point is probably my favorite point in the entire map, maybe my favorite point of the entire year. No compromise. Such a great quote. If you limit your choices to only seems what possible and reasonable, you disconnect yourself from what you truly want, and all you have left is compromise. The human spirit will not invest itself in compromise. I love that part. The human spirit will not invest itself in compromise. When was the last time that you felt truly alive? That's really what this question is all about. The last time that you felt truly alive, charged with energy and running headfirst into your goals without worry or pressure. For some of us, of course, it's been a long time. That's a sad affair, but with this concept, we know how to deal with it. Your spirit needs you to disconnect from your fear, guilt, or shame around what you truly want. Why would it give you access to the unbelievable energy, ingenuity, and creative force when you're playing below its level? When you've been putting the training wheels on so that you cannot fall, you can't truly play all out. And instead, I recommend that you try this. If I was sure that I would succeed, I would. Given that there is absolutely no way that I can fail, I want this. Write that down. What does that look like for you? And when you get out there, when you realize what you truly want, realize that the only thing standing between you and that thing that you truly want is fear. Our next point and our final point is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The best place to begin the creative process is at the end. What's the final result that you want? This way of thinking helps you conceive a result that you want to create independently from how you will create it. So there are 5 steps in the creative process, as Fritz tells us. Step number 1, begin with the end. What do you want first, right? Remember that no compromise question though. What do I want given that I could not possibly fail? Step number 2, what currently exists? Where are you right now? We've got a point A or we've got a point B. We need to know what a point A is. Step number 3 is take massive action. Try a bunch of things, do a bunch of work, move towards that goal in some measurable way. Learn the rhythms of the process is step number 4. In other words, sometimes you're going to have tons of energy, be able to move towards that big goal, and sometimes you're not. And sometimes you're going to fail, sometimes you're going to have to kind of regroup, and that's okay. You need to learn the rhythms of the process and be okay with whatever part of the process you're in. Step number 5 is create momentum. Let's get a bunch of little wins going. And if you can get a bunch of little wins, it's going to kind of continually propel you towards your one true thing, your uncompromising big goal, your uncompromising primary goal. So that was The Path of Least Resistance by Robert Fritz. I want to thank you for being with me here today. If you want to get more insight into all things that is goal setting, all things that is learning, tons of different things, you can visit themindmapguy.com and check out all of my courses. You can check out the mind mapping course. You can see exactly how I mind map. You can check out the course on habits that I have coming up next month, or you can check out the course on learning that's going out this month. Thanks so much for being with me today, and I'll see you in the next one.